And we are reading from the Divine Code, pages 29 and 30. In addition to observing the 7 Noahide commandments with their many details, a Gentile was commanded to act in the proper ways that human intelligence would compel him. Whether these are obligations to God or to other people or to society as a whole. Even though Gentiles are not commanded in detail about these parameters of proper conduct, nevertheless, God carefully checks and judges all the ways of every person. There are actions for which the individuals or society is liable to be punished, since such behavior is not appropriate for the human race. That is, the true speciality of mankind is expressed in Tractate of Vote 3:14. He, Rabbi Akiva, used to say, "Beloved is man, for he was created in the image of God." It is even greater love that it was made known to him that he was created in the image of God, as is stated in Genesis 9:6. For in the image of God he made man. So God created man in his image. In that image, there's attributes of God that we should be able to emulate that go beyond commandments. Just because we should be able to understand this, we should be able to understand the proper way to live. And God expects from us the ability to think through many of these things. Even though it is beyond the scope of the 7 commandments. Societal morality is included in the commandment of dinim and judgments, by which the children of Noah were commanded to set up courts of law and judges who will supervise and warn society about prohibited behaviors. But God will look upon the ways of an individual and judge him for his every action, even if he is not under the jurisdiction of the court of law. That is, this is a court that punishes convicted transgressors of the 7 Noahide commandments. So even if he's not under the jurisdiction of the law, we're still expected to behave in a proper manner, in a godly manner. We're to emulate the attributes of God. Even in areas that we're not commanded. If the court is not able to judge him, or if the court does not know about his behavior, and there's a footnote, Tractate Sanhedrin 104b relates that the destruction of the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, even though the practice of idol worship and forbidden sexual relations was rampant in those cities, in outright rebellion against God, the divine decree of their total destruction came because they banned any practice of charity and kindness to the extreme. They punished any performer of good deeds with torturous execution. We also read about this in Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 49, where Sodom, the sin of Sodom is explained as extreme lack of charity. They did not give charity, and they did not allow people to give charity. So there was a divine decree against Sodom because they didn't give charity. Well, that's not one of the 7 laws. That's a attribute of God that mankind is supposed to emulate. And that was what, according to Ezekiel, that is what the decree against Sodom was because of their lack of charity, which is a necessary element of human society. And they went against what was necessary for human society. Hence, it is obvious that God demands moral conduct from mankind, even though it is not explicitly commanded. See Ramban on Genesis chapter 6, verse 2, explaining why the generation of Noah's flood was punished specifically because of theft, even though they violated all of their commandments. Because theft is a logical commandment that no one can negotiate and can negate by saying, "We did not know that we were commanded." And this is further explained in future chapters in the Divine Code. This is an ongoing theme in the Divine Code, that what is logical, what should be understood by human intellect, is something that God will judge human society for, which is what happened in Sodom, and it's also what happened in the time of Noah's flood. In the times of Noah's flood, there was other sins that occurred, and the Ramban, chapter 6, verse 2, it speaks of the rulers, the sons of their rulers. The sons of God saw the daughters of man, and they were good. They took for themselves wives from whomever they chose. So they were taking the wife from, they just took for themselves, and this is understood by the Ramban to refer to kidnapping. They kidnapped the women, which is under the laws of theft. The Ramban explains that they were also taking other men's wives. So why was it, according to the Ramban, the decree of destruction was because of the kidnapping? Because kidnapping and theft is something that's most logical. It's possible to say that adultery and other forms of sexual inappropriateness could be logically explained away. And we find that rampant in our society. But theft is like almost the bedrock of human society, is the prohibition against theft. The 9/10 of the law is property rights, possession, who owns what, and what the rules of finances are in that is the main part of law, of what government comes up with, because it's logical and because it's sort of the foundation. It's the structure that society needs to function with. The Ramban goes on to explain in Genesis chapter 6, verse 13, God said to Noah, "The end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with injustice through them. And behold, I am about to destroy them from the earth." So God sees this injustice, and the Ramban explains this even more than he does in the other verse. The Ramban explains that injustice, that refers to theft, And that's the most logical of all the commandments, and therefore that's what caused the destruction at the time of the flood, was because of the stealing. So that's what's being explained here in the divine code, is that there's this logical thing that should be understood, and these are referred to as obligations, things that we just should do, even though we're not commanded. Earth exists for the purpose of being settled, for civilization to function, and we just need to be able to do these things. So that's part of the divine code, even if it's not one specifically of the seven mitzvahs. And that's what happened in Sodom. There's no mitzvah for a Noahide to give charity, but it's expected for a Noahide society to function, that charity be given. It's just necessary for human society. The purpose of this book is to explain these 7 commandments according to Torah principles and Torah law, including both their general rules and their details, and also the moral obligations that are intellectually incumbent. All of this is in order to teach faithful Gentiles the way of God and the path in which it is proper for them to go, until they will merit, through the distinctions of the spiritual beauty, the distinctions and spiritual beauty of the pious of the nations of the world. The pious of the nations of the world, these are Gentiles who earn eternal spiritual reward by accepting upon themselves to fulfill the 7 Noahide commandments and being very careful in their observance, specifically because the Holy One, blessed be He, commanded them in the Torah and informed us through Moses, our teacher, that Noah's descendants had been previously commanded to fulfill them. And this is the definition of what we today call a Noahide. The pious of the nations of the world are people that take on the 7 commandments, who take on this Torah that is for the nations. And it was given in the Torah with Moses. So these 7 commandments not only were given to Adam, they were not only given to Noah, they were given as part of the Torah. And they have all the strength that the Jewish commandments have for the Jews. These 7 commandments also have for the nations, for individual Gentiles and for the nations. There's a Torah strength and a Torah beauty and a Torah benefit, reward that comes from accepting the Torah that applies to the Gentiles. We become part of that system that the Jews have, because they were given the Torah at Sinai. The basis for fulfillment of the Noahide code, Rambam explains in the Laws of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He, commanded the 7 Noahide commandments in the Torah and informed Moses, our teacher, that Noah's descendants had been previously commanded to fulfill them. This means that even though Noah's descendants were previously commanded to fulfill them, the divine command was not nullified in legal terms, and Gentiles are still obligated by the power of the original commandments. Nonetheless, there were more details added by God through Moses at the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. Clearly, the Noahide commandments were commanded to Moses because even though they were commanded previously to Adam and Noah, they were never written down as Torah before Mount Sinai. The recording in the written Torah was through Moses, and the explanations and details were transmitted in the oral Torah. As transmitted in the oral Torah, were given to Moses, as will be explained. So more these laws were given to Adam, and they were given to Noah. Those laws were never taken away, but they were increased at Sinai. So the nations are still expected, even today, they're still expected to follow the 7 laws, and they will be judged or rewarded based upon their adherence to these 7 laws. What was given at Sinai was the extra strength, the details that were given to Moses, or the method of learning the details that were given to Moses, depending on how you understand that. That extended, that made the 7 commandments what we understand them to be today. According to this above cited ruling, Rambam explains that descendants of Noah are obligated to observe their 7 commandments because these were commanded to them by God through Moses. And B, when the Torah was given by God through Moses, there was a spiritual dimension that he added to the Gentiles as well as for the Jews. The exclamation of the spiritual dimension of the Noahide code, which was added by God through Moses at Mount Sinai, is given by Rambam in the Laws of the Foundations of the Torah, chapter 8. And this will continue on, and Rambam explains, this is in tomorrow's reading, and we just see through this A and B that the laws still exist as they were given to Adam and as they were given to Moses, to Noah. Moses gave a spiritual dimension that is available to us if we choose to be part of the pious from the nations of the world. We attach ourselves to the spiritual dimension of the 7 laws and the rewards that come with that, being part of the pious among the nations of the world. That will be explained more also in the Divine Code. Thank you.